as you can imagine, my mom immediately started crying.
Oh.
So she was like, what, is this a joke? You want to sell your practice and sell Pancheros to sell toilet paper and cups? And what do you think? And
Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. I'm so excited to have Kaveh Mostafavi on the show today. Kaveh started out his career as an attorney in Arizona, specializing in bankruptcy law. In addition to his practice, Kaveh opened up 2 Pancheros restaurants as a franchisee. Now, while his stint as a restaurateur didn't pan out the way he had hoped, it was that experience, specifically witnessing the amount of waste in his restaurants, that led him to create his current company. Kaveh is now the founder and CEO of EcoCare Supply, a wholesale distribution firm focused on sustainable products and systems. EcoCare is one of the nation's fastest growing supply companies and helps customers increase their bottom line while reducing environmental impact. In a couple short years, Kaveh has grown EcoCare into a 7-figure company. We'll find out how he did it and what he's learned along the way. Hi, Kaveh. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
of course, I appreciate you having me.
No problem. So I want to learn everything about EcoCare and how you're saving the world one cup at a time. But before we start that, I sort of want to start from the beginning and get a little background of how you became a lawyer, sort of what led you to that. Like, why did you want to become a lawyer, and kind of the early part of your career?
Yeah. Being a first generation immigrant and landing in Iowa, my parents always instilled this drive to get ahead, and the most effective and efficient way to get ahead was to educate yourself. So like most Iranian families, it was, you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whether you like it or not. Those are your options. Pick one and devote your whole life to it, regardless of how it affects you. So, initially I thought, like my brother, I was going to become a doctor. And so I went that route, in my junior high and high school years, and up to my first year in college, I was a pre-med. And so throughout high school, I, did the camps, learned enough about it. It interested me enough to keep me going. I was attracted to the quote unquote lifestyle that being a doctor may have provided. But as I really got into formal training and going into the university, it was something that I couldn't really attach to. So I remember doing a spine neck program where we actually worked with live cadaver spines in these brackets, and I would have to leave, and I would have to leave the room. I was getting sick to my stomach, and I said, well, how am I going to do this,
right,
if I can't even handle this?
Right.
So from there, I kind of was like, okay, so it's doctor or engineer. Well, I'm a little too hyper to sit around and try to, mechanically or civilly figure out remedies for certain issues. So, okay, that leaves me law. Well, what does law have to offer? And the training of law, it was super attractive to me because it allowed you to think more efficiently and problem solve in a more detailed fashion. So naturally, I went into pre-law, and that's where I stuck, and then went to Drake Law and got the law degree, and then moved to Arizona to practice. So
that's so relatable. I mean, obviously, I'm also an Iranian American, first generation, and I mean, I'm so sure a lot of people relate to it, but I think especially immigrant children, I think our parents, obviously wanted the best, and so that's the only way they kind of knew we would get ahead, and we all felt that same pressure where it's like you don't really have many choices. And it's funny, when I was growing up, I never even thought that there was a choice to not go to grad school. Like it was never even an option. Like it wasn't just like, oh, you go to college. Like you go to college and then you pick a grad school. So figure out what grad school it's going to be. And now looking back, it seems funny because I realized other people had other options. And I literally didn't know that it was an option to not go to grad school. Like I just thought like that's what you do. And so I completely relate. And you said, so your brother is a doctor and you became a lawyer, right?
Yes, yeah.
So your parents were happy. I mean, we'll get to what happened when you maybe decided not to do law. But so then you moved to Arizona for the lifestyle, or because for law took you out there? Or?
Yeah. So my brother, I graduated law school the same time he was finishing residency, and he had already signed with a hospital in Gilbert. And so, he said, well, I love Iowa with all my heart, but when you're in your mid 20s, and you've grown up there your whole life, that there's other things out in the world, and there's bigger opportunities. And the lifestyle of, nicer places to eat, better nightlife. I mean, it's just, and the weather, quite honest, the weather was the driving factor.
Right.
So all those factors, it was either there or California, and, cause a lot of family in California. So Arizona was just a natural fit to go. And, I was there 8 years, practiced for about 6.5.
So what did you practice when you got out there?
Well, I got licensed in 2008. So it was, right around the time of the economic, collapse.
Right.
I got signed with a bankruptcy law firm. And so that's kind of where the beginning of the end for my legal career started, was day one of working for a very big bankruptcy law firm. Because what I saw there it was just a mill. We were just churning out these bankruptcies, not really taking part in, we helped a lot of people, and I made it a point to spend more time and give better service. So we helped a lot of people, but the owner of the firm was absolutely insane. And so, he was driven by the dollar, and that's capitalism, whatever. I can't really knock that, but when you take out all moral, ethical, guidelines, then I have an issue with that. So crazy enough, turns out this guy, was a drug addict, ended up stabbing and killing an ASU student.
Oh my God. You're joking.
I swear. And so I went to the office one morning to pick up files for court. And,
God.
there was tape, and they said, you can't get your files. And I had to go into the court with, no files. And that afternoon I found out what had happened. And so I immediately resigned. And
I bet.
Yeah. And went and just struck out on my own, started my own practice, doing bankruptcies. And after a few years of bankruptcies, I brought on 2 partners. We did expanded to personal injury, DUI, some criminal defense. And so that was going well. And so that was the first time that I really found an attachment to law, because, I wasn't working for a crazy guy.
Right.
It was my own practice. My entrepreneurial spirit was really vibrant at that time, because it was, a firm created out of nothing. I took a few clients with me, but essentially I started all over. And then to see it morph into, a pretty nice firm with 2 partners and doing great work. And I was able to incorporate more of my personal touch into the legal profession. So that ended up really being a great time. But inherently deep down, I mean, you hear this all the time, but deep down inside, I was just not in a good place when I was thinking about my professional career. I wasn't getting that satisfaction. I wasn't getting the fulfillment of getting up and doing really good, what I thought productive work. Sure, we were helping a lot of people. We were, doing bankruptcies. We were helping people that were injured, but that fulfillment wasn't there. So after a few years, again, I got that bug in my ear that said, your happiness is more important. You can find something that you can really wake up every day and be happy doing. I found that the legal profession, especially in the areas that I was doing, the procedural guidelines, I mean, it was just a very inefficient process.
Right.
Bankruptcies are pretty standard, but all the other areas were pretty inefficient. And I'm a bit more hyper of a type. So that combined with my entrepreneurial, spirit, kind of got me into the restaurant field. So in Iowa, we had this brand called Pancheros that basically opened up same time as Chipotle, same concept, except has fresh tortillas, yada, yada. So we grew up with this brand. So my brother and I actually franchised the restaurants for Arizona. So we opened in Tempe and one in Chandler.
Okay, so wait, so before we get to that, I just want to really quickly go back to your story of, through bankruptcy law. I think one of the interesting things, you sort of just stumble upon like the practice area that you're going to do. It's, well, for whatever reason, you get a job in something and they kind of shuffle you into one practice group, or you get a job with a specific type of firm, like you said, a bankruptcy firm. And then that sort of, not that it's not a conscious decision, I guess, but it's sort of by happenstance, and like, it feels hard to say like, well, I've done bankruptcy for 4 years. Now I'm just going to quit and try, family law, or I'm going to start doing like mergers and acquisitions. Like, you just don't do that. And so you end up staying in the same thing, even if, like you were saying, it may not be fulfilling to you, or you may see like the inefficiencies and it's not really like calling to you. So I don't know, that I think that, again, that's something that a lot of people go through, and it's interesting. So
law firms are businesses, right? So they're going to recruit the best talent, and then they're going to plug them into the places that they see them most profitable.
100%. 100%.
A lot of times it isn't up to us. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So while you're practicing, when did you guys decide to franchise in Pancheros in Arizona? Like, was this in the beginning or kind of towards the end after you were sort of done practicing?
So it's funny. I went out, opened my own practice in 2009, the same year that we opened up Pancheros. Oh. So I was kind of doing both.
Double duty.
Yeah. So it was a pretty trying time, but yeah.
Did you have any experience in the restaurant business?
Not at all. I worked in a couple of restaurants, which, it's beautiful because, from day one, that Iranian father, that instinct, like, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing this? Why put your money into a restaurant? Why don't you get a proven field? He had always been in real estate. So he was like, give me that money and I'll tell you, don't do this stupid thing. So sure enough, 5 or 6 years later, he was absolutely correct. It's not something, we thought, because they did so well in Iowa.
Right.
We thought it was just an absolute winner. And I still to this day eat it multiple times a week. The food is great. It's just, if you can't get into something if you don't live, breathe, eat.
Right.
And so my brother was the practicing physician. I was, in my firm, and we were both kind of going there as much as possible, but
it wasn't your full-time gig.
It was not, no.
So this is an interesting question, because I think, when I decided to quit law in 2014, and I was sort of at this place where I was like, what am I going to do? And I knew I wanted to work, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. One of the things I started looking at is becoming a franchisee, because I think that when you want to dabble in business, or you haven't ever run a business, it could seem very attractive because it's, they give you a blueprint. You have to invest money, but they have worked out all the marketing. They've worked out the systems. They show you how to, open it up or whatnot. Do you think that if you were there full time, or if somebody is interested in doing, being a franchisee, that if you do it as your full-time gig, then it's something that, you guys probably could have made more of a success out of?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously when you get the graduate education, especially the legal profession, it is an invaluable degree to have in business, because it allows you to think in multiple arenas, think 10 steps ahead, and efficiently figure out a solution. So absolutely. That's rule number one in any entrepreneurship. If you're half-assing it, you're not going to get very far.
Right.
Or if you're splitting your time with that, and then you're going to dabble with another side business, and then you have, friends and family. And so rule number one, in my opinion, in entrepreneurship is you have to devote 110%.
Right.
Entrepreneurs are risk takers. They're going out and saying, I'm going to completely put all my money, thought, ideologies, everything, my spirit into this business. And so the ones that have the best chance of succeeding are the ones that actually, truly incorporate that and devote a true 100% into it.
Right.
So that was our first mistake. The first mistake was getting into something that we had absolutely no idea about. That was the first mistake.
Yeah, but I think that, just fast forwarding a little bit, and we'll get to Eco Supply Care, and I want to know how, it sort of came about. But this is something that has been kind of interesting on my own journey is, before, I think as a lawyer, I would hear people like always talk about like, oh, I don't believe in failure, or you just, failures are just lessons. And I would think like, yeah, that's what losers say, but because you're literally taught like there's winners and losers, and you don't think that when you lose a case. You don't think like, oh, well, I learned a great lesson, like you lost and it sucks, or if you didn't make partner or whatnot. But now kind of in business, I see that it really is true in the sense that like there's no way to make it to a certain place without taking 1,000 steps beforehand. And so you learn certain things, like with each business, you end up learning certain stuff. And for you, I think like, we could joke about like that, maybe not being the best decision for you guys starting that. But if you hadn't started Pancheros, like you may not have EcoCare Supply because, from what I know, it was the stuff that you saw in that restaurant that kind of led you to this idea. And so while maybe it wasn't the best decision, like maybe that was what led you to what, the success you have now.
Absolutely. 100%. My brother says the same thing. He said, he lost quite a bit more than I did. And he's like, it was the biggest mistake and best lesson I've ever learned. He's like, so it's invaluable to me. It cost a lot, but it was invaluable. And so you have to learn that. To this day, I make mistakes, learn. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship is there's a solution, that you do keep learning. No one is ever really educated in entrepreneurship. The law degree does, in my opinion, the best job of at least providing you the interpretations, thought processes, and, ways of thinking to actually figure out solutions. Because there's going to be, when you're out on your own, you have to figure everything out.
Right.
And you have to do it, efficiently and so, but no, you have to learn the hard way. There's no other way to do it. Franchises are great. Where we really went wrong with Pancheros is figuring out how big Chipotle was in the market and, seeing how aggressive they would be. So we were doing, Pancheros was actually, it was right outside Tempe. It was doing absolutely great. Mm-hmm. Then Chipotle realized that they were losing market share. And so they just built about 5 or 6 stores around us.
Oh.
They had such deeper pockets.
Right.
They could go in and pay anything for a space. Right. So that's where we went wrong. We didn't do our due diligence in figuring out what the market is, who are the competitors, and how to best adapt to those. So that was a huge lesson I learned prior to starting EcoCare.
Okay, so what led you to starting EcoCare? And I mean, ultimately, you're now back in Iowa, right? You started EcoCare in Iowa?
Correct, yep. Mm-hmm.
Did you go there to start it, or did you move back and then this idea came about?
So what happened was I got to a point in the legal profession, and it was, my disdain for the profession, because at a certain point, it was a disdain. It stemmed from my girlfriend at the time. She was a prosecutor, and she was doing child sex crimes. And I would hear every day these stories about just the most atrocious crimes that can ever be committed. And so that combined with my already, not being fully committed, I lost my passion for even pursuing my own firm. So I discussed a dissolution with my partners, and we did that because this opportunity came about with a friend of mine's husband who was in the supply business. So he essentially one day came to Pancheros and says, "Hey, where are you getting all your napkins and your cups and your bathroom stuff and your cleaners?" And I was like, "I have no idea," which was another mistake. And Pancheros is you always have to know what you're spending your money on. And so sure enough, he comes in and he's like, "Well, I can get you all this stuff and I can get it to you way cheaper." And so when I found that out, and then when he actually did it, it sparked an interest in me. I said, "Wow, we're just one small restaurant in Tempe and we buy this much stuff." When we're looking at the scale of this industry, it's huge. So that initially excited me. And so I sold the practice to my partners. I sold my interest in Pancheros to my brother, and I invested in this guy's supply business. And I spent about a year with him, and through that experience, I learned the supply business. I learned, on a macro scale, how much product humans are consuming and the effects of that and its effects on our landfills and our waterways. Mm-hmm. And so it just immediately sparked this interest in me. I grew up in a farm town in Iowa, so I always had a huge connection and affinity to nature and making sure we're taking care of it, because in Iowa, our main products are agricultural products. So without a healthy environment, the state does not do well. So it's just kind of you grow up with that. So that was the first time I truly felt, holy cow, this is a purpose in my life. Yeah. Sure, the legal profession provided a purpose. We did a lot of great work, and it was a great thing, but I didn't get this really excitement
Right.
of, wow, this is a real purpose. So that's where the whole idea of EcoCare started.
One of the things that I'm like most interested about is, so when you say, I mean, you sort of gloss over like, I dissolved, sold my shares and I decided I'm going to, follow this guy around for a year. Were you like scared to tell your parents or your brother? Or, did you think to yourself, like, am I crazy? Like, what am I doing? I'm stopping this firm. I'm just wondering, like, how did that whole process go for you?
It's funny because you hear it all the time that entrepreneurs are crazy. To a certain extent, you have to have that just absolute disregard for logic, even though you're an attorney and you have all this great, stable, business. It's a drive within you that it can't be explained, because I pride myself on being a logical thinker,
right?
But in those situations, your unhappiness is so profound that you're driven by any idea that will take you out of that unhappiness. So once I caught that, when I decided to exit the firm and sell to Pancheros, I actually did call my parents. And as you can imagine, my mom immediately started crying. So she was like, what? Is this a joke? You want to sell your practice and sell Pancheros to sell toilet paper and cups? And what do you think? And like, so she just immediately started crying. My dad, he's, more of an entrepreneur. So he was like, okay, I get it, but you're an idiot, pretty much, for like wanting to let go of stable things. He said, keep those things, and then, also invest with this guy. But learning that first mistake, which is you can't split up your time, I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to add another business into this. So and so after a while, I told him to trust me. Quite honestly, I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction and following my intuition.
Right.
And so, because it was so profound, it was such a strong feeling within me that this was the right move for me, that I expressed that confidence to them. And so, and then when I subsequently, and we'll talk about so the company I invested in was called Service Plus Sanitary Supply, and something went down with that. So what essentially the move out of law into Service Plus, and then the move back to Iowa, were all precipitated with just this profound drive to do that.
I agree. Like, I wholeheartedly have the same situation where I was like, I get it. Like, people are going to think I'm crazy, or there's going to be a lot of, like, what is she doing? Whatever. But I don't care. I don't care at this point. Like, I have to follow this. I have to try, because otherwise, like, I'll always wonder what would have happened. And so it's just kind of indescribable, but I totally understand.
It's a huge risk. On one end, I'm forever grateful for my parents, as I'm sure you are, to have driven me to say, hey, use your intelligence, use your hard work ethic, and make something of yourself. Okay, fine. But they didn't really press the do something you love, right? They said, you have to get ahead, and this is how you do it. Right. So that's hugely respectable, but it's that piece of it that's kind of neglected. So their parents, they want what's best, but that's what kind of got us in the trouble of being in an unhappy position, right?
Well, and to be fair, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we were in high school, going to college or whatnot, and clearly at our parents' generation, there weren't a lot of other options besides the traditional stable career. So I don't really blame my parents. I think at that time, even like the internet wasn't really around, and so when I was starting college, it wasn't like there's all these other opportunities. Now, one of the reasons I kind of want to like shake people and be like, try something else, is it's so easy to start your own side business or side, there's so many things you can do online, and it doesn't require a ton of capital, and it doesn't require a lot of other stuff. It just requires you to like look at what it is you want to do and figure a way out. And I'm not saying that's a very hard thing to do. It's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but I do think that they didn't have those options. So it's a lot of times, it's like, obviously they want their kids to be successful and stable and, have a good life. And so what were the choices, and
oh yeah, to this day 95% of businesses fail, right? So are your parents, as immigrants in this country, going to guide, or were they going to guide us down a path that had a 90% probability of failure? Absolutely not. But today with just the internet and people being so connected to one another, you're absolutely right, there is endless possibilities to create income from providing products or services that you are passionate about, but that's where it all starts. You have to want to learn every single aspect of that business. So that's what I did essentially with Service Plus, is I spent a year just really diving in and learning the supply chain, the players. How do you sell? I'd never really sold in my life.
I love that. I love that you did that, by the way. It's, a lot of us are, especially when you want to start something new, and naturally, like, you're overwhelmed because you have no idea how to start it. And I think sometimes people's ego is what gets in the way. And so again, they worry about what people think, or they worry about what it looks like. But I mean, those are the steps that like lead you to success. And I think a lot of times it's easy to look at you now and say like, oh yeah, well, he was a lawyer and he is, now a successful businessman. But people don't look at the years and years of hard work and the like right, steps that you take to get there.
Yeah. And again, it all starts with that risk. And again, there has to be confidence. I've always been confident enough to just trust my instinct, whether that hasn't always worked out. I mean, when it's truly in my instinctual, in my soul, then it's always been the right thing. Sometimes I don't follow that. And so that's what a lot of times got me into the unhappy position. But this time I follow that. So there has to be that confidence. But I was confident knowing that, hey, I had this opportunity to go learn with this guy. And EcoCare basically flourished from that. But it turned out he actually, was running Service Plus as a fraud and running a Ponzi scheme. So again, while I was learning all this amazing information and really going through a graduate school of the supply business, on the back end the whole time, it was for naught, and
Kaveh, I'm going to start questioning your judgment of people.
Again,
I would have given you one murder boss, but now we're getting into like another fraudulent.
Exactly. You and my dad think just like the first day he walked into our office, I said, Dad, look at where I am. I'm the executive vice president, in-house counsel of this company, and we sell all this product, and it's so great. And he's married to one of our best friends, and he's just a great guy. And my dad, first moment he walked in, he's like, this guy's a crook. And I was like, what do you mean? I just sacrificed everything to come on board with this. And it's like my first week and you come in and you say, this is all crazy, but I knew, again, my driving factor was I am learning so much in this new industry that I know can be lucrative because people consume product, on a daily basis all over the world. So it's, there's so much that goes into entrepreneurship, that the franchises are stable. They'll give you the formula, and then these other industries, I'm super blessed. I'm not going to, pretend that I got into this business and figured, I came up with a new concept and a very new idea and a kind of a disruptive model in the industry, but the industry's always been there and it's always been dominated by certain players. So I got super lucky to have the opportunity to go learn that, you know? So there's not a lot of companies like Service Plus out there or EcoCare. So there's not a lot of great opportunity, but those opportunities exist everywhere. It just takes you saying, what am I interested in? I'm interested in X, product or Y service, or this is what drives me. I like to do this type of work, and then go learn about it. Who's in the game? Who profits from the game? Who doesn't? And from all that research, we were taught to research, endlessly. So I utilized that training to find my way through this business, so.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So you worked for them for a year and they were in Arizona?
They were in Arizona. Yeah.
Okay. And so you learned this, and they weren't doing sustainable products, right? It was just more of you were just learning kind of the supply chain and the systems for this product-based company. Correct.
So you'll find that 95% of the suppliers out in the world are not sustainably focused. So that's where I saw the opportunity.
Nice.
He was, same, just offering products, general traditional stuff. But through that, as I learned products, as I learned manufacturers, I saw that there was all this sustainable product being manufactured,
And so then when did you decided that you were going to kind of strike out on your own and do this sustainable product model?
After about a year, there was so much not making sense to me. Again, how invaluable this law degree is I was just like diving into his email. I mean, things were not making sense. So immediately I started preparing myself for a dissolution, because I had invested in the company. And so, and through that was the time that I had the EcoCare idea. So I presented the idea to him prior to finding out about all the fraud. I said, what do you think about this? When he said, this is a terrible idea, I knew that something was fishy, because I knew that I went to him with, not to be an egomaniac, but a really great freaking idea about how we can build a niche in this industry. And he was like, oh, it's a stupid idea. So that's when it all kind of sparked my real looking into the fraud and all that. And sure enough, found out it was happening, demanded my money back. And so after, you're right. My judge, being a small town guy from Iowa, I got to tell you, we take people for, and that's what
you're very trusting.
Yeah, we're trusting. It's like, why swindle and lie and this and that? Like we were operating Service Plus as a very good, growing, scalable business, but he was using it as a fraud versus just focusing on doing the productive work and making it a big business, Right. So for someone like me that grew up in Iowa, it's like, why do that? That's completely illogical to me on an emotional level. So anyway, after the attorney that stabbed the student, murdered some guy, and then after dealing with the founder of Service Plus, I said, I'm going back to Iowa. I'm doing EcoCare in Iowa. If it's a great idea, it will grow. If it's not, it won't. And from there, at least I have the law degree to fall back on. But I'm basically, I sold everything. I had a condo in Arizona, sold that, moved back in with my parents at the age of 34, lived in their basement. I mean, it's like the cheesy cliche story.
But I think that's the reason. First of all, I think it's a cliche. I always say it's like cliches are there for a reason. They're the truth, like you say it so much, it becomes cliche. But again, I think it's stuff that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So a lot of people wonder like, oh, I'm going to move back to this home, my hometown where people know me. And I moved away to be this big lawyer in Arizona. And now I'm coming back to move into my parents' basement. Like, what is it? What is everyone going to say? Or what are people going to think? Or I can't do that or whatnot. And that's what stops people from ultimately getting to a place where they're actually happy and fulfilled and doing something that they feel aligned with versus like somebody saying like, hey, you know what? I'm putting it on the line. Like, who cares what people think? Like, this is my life. I have to do something that feels right to me and I'm going to put it all on the line.
Yeah. I mean, that's how driven I was by the unhappiness. In my twisted thought process, I was like, people are going to wonder what the hell I'm doing back and why I would leave law and living in Arizona and having my own firm and having Pancheros to move back to Iowa to live with my parents to sell toilet paper. So I was like, I can get any meeting. I know that for a fact because people are going to want to know what the hell I'm doing. Oh,
that's so smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I used it to my advantage.
Yeah. Okay. So you started this in what year?
2014 is when we incorporated. January of 15, we actually delivered our first product. So
now, do you guys focus? You only deliver products in Iowa, is that right? Or you do it? Okay,
correct. So right now we do Des Moines, which is the capital of Iowa, and then Iowa City, which is where the University of Iowa is, where I grew up, and then Cedar Rapids, which is another bigger metropolis. But we do have dreams to scale this national.
So how big are you guys now? How many employees do you have?
We have 15 employees.
That's incredible. I mean, to start with, in your basement and then now you're employing 15 people.
It's a legitimate idea at this point. So being in the entrepreneur community here, if you hit $1 million in sales in Iowa in a given year, it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that to, again, be ego or boast or anything, but, it was a good indicator of how far we've come. So in year 3, we hit the $1 million gross revenue mark.
That's incredible.
Yeah. For a brand new idea, literally, no one's done it this way. And so for that to happen in a town of, our population here is 30,000, 60,000 with the students. And then Des Moines has a few 100,000, but we've come a long way. We've proven that it's a legitimate business, and that, it's able to employ a lot of people. For me, I'm driven by creating jobs in Iowa. And then nationally, of course, I'm also an entrepreneur. So, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm not doing this for financial gain as well. But
it's funny because it's, America is a capitalist society and we always talk about the American dream and, making money. But then sometimes it's also, we equate it with like a dirty word. And I mean, obviously you have to make money in order to be in business, or you wouldn't be in business, like, I don't think that's something to be, it should be something you should definitely be proud of and boasting, that you guys hit that $1 million mark is incredible. And the fact that it's growing and that you're employing people, I mean, that's the point. Why else would you go into business, and the fact that you can do it while helping people and creating a product that is helping save the world and, disrupting a market that has been a certain way to make it better.
Beyond the job creation and the success of how fast it's grown, it's really, we are truly, truly having an impact. So essentially we can sell at this point any commercial product, restaurant product, foodware, chemicals, janitorial, sanitary. We focus on, so we're a research development firm where we've, source eco-friendly cleaners, so we have our leading line of cleaners are probiotic based. Our leading line of foodware is compostable. Our leading lines of restroom products are all either compostable paper or bio-based soaps and sanitizers. So we can kind of do it all, but we sell and we focus on the sustainable products that really, really true to heart have less of an impact. They're either less toxic or, decompose to a rich fertilizer, and so we have the product side, we have a green janitorial cleaning division, and then we have a compost pickup service where we essentially gather food, compostable waste, and go divert that to zero waste compost, which becomes a natural organic fertilizer for our farmers around the state to pick up and use for their crops.
That's incredible. That's so awesome. And that clearly is where things are going. I think people are becoming, the more they become conscious about all of our waste and the impact that we're having on the world, and people want to see a difference. And I think now companies, whether it's because they, internally want to do it or because they're responding to customer desires and wants, are starting to go in that direction. I see it a lot more in California. Hopefully, you guys will be national soon, and we can have you back on the show when you hit your $1 billion status.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, that'll be my goal. So.
I would love that. Well, I mean, This is so incredible to see that success is wonderful, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you being here. So, do you have any final thoughts, any advice or any books that you read or anything you could tell somebody that kind of feels in that same place that you were at that firm where you're doing well, but you're just not happy and you're trying to figure out what your next move is, but you don't know what to do?
Yeah. I mean, the first step is, just like any emotional well-being is admitting that you are unhappy, right? Yes. It's saying, okay, I hate my job, and it's okay to say that, and I'm kind of biased because, I didn't have any kids. I didn't have any commitments. So right. I could pick up and just say, hey, I'm doing this. But really it comes down to being true to that feeling, to say, I am unhappy here. Yes. What, and how can I get myself out? Well, I am an educated person. I have been taught in a way of thinking and problem solving that's super efficient, that's super effective. So why not identify what I like first and foremost? What can I really wake up every day and be like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to work? Because quite honestly, to this point, after, 5-6 years, I'm still working 15-hour days. I'm still, it's that commitment. So combining that first identifying that you're unhappy, and then finding something that does really drive you, and combining that with just absolutely relentless work to figure out a formula to make something out of it.
Right.
And if you get to a dead end, then you get to a dead end. But at least that's how I would say is to start, is to actually, in your free time, research the things that make you happy.
Yeah.
I read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that's just a amazing book, to kind of just show you what life can be. And then from there, it's for me, I'm kind of a hippie in the fact that I say, think it, say it, live it, breathe it, put your efforts into it, and something will undoubtedly happen.
I can agree more. I'll link that book in the show notes for anybody that wants to go find it. But I agree, with everything. But I think the biggest thing when you're saying admit it is so important, because so many of us try to sort of, it's so funny when you say this intuition and your instinct, and like, deep down you're unhappy. Like I knew it, but because like that's what the position you're at, and maybe you can't leave right then or whatnot, whatever your situation is, you sort of start justifying it. And obviously you have to live your life. So you're kind of like telling yourself like, oh, it's not that bad, or I don't work as much as like my, friends at this law firm, or I don't do, and I remember doing that. But I knew I was unhappy. It was obvious. And so I think it is such a huge step to really just admit like, no, I'm not happy in this. And it's okay to try to find something that makes me happy. Like it's okay to be happy in my life. And I'm allowed to, like, just because I made a decision to go to law school when I was 20 doesn't mean that I have to do this for the rest of my life. I can decide that, this just wasn't for me. I tried it. It wasn't for me. Like you said, I got a great education out of it. And now I'm going to try something else.
Yeah. And lawyers are highly recruited, and so it's not like the law degree only allows us to do one thing.
Right.
Anyone would love to have someone with a JD on their team, right, in my opinion, if because we're good problem solvers, we're driven, we're educated, so it's absolutely, you don't have to be pigeonholed to just a legal career.
Well, thank you so much. If people want to check out EcoCare Supply or find you, where's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so EcoCare Supply is just ecocaresupply.com. The Compost Ninja, which is our compost service, is thecompostninja.com. My email is Kaveh, Kaveh, at ecocaresupply.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Kaveh. I really appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thank you for thinking of me for this. I think it's so cool that you're doing this, because it takes the conversation to start for people to find their way out.
I know. We're going to make one less miserable person in this world, and we will have accomplished something.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kaveh.
Hey, have a good night.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter, and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.